Hi, welcome back to the Painter Studio. I'm Nick Fox. If you want to paint water, you have to know about the wind and how it affects water. The wind is responsible for wave direction and scale. First, we're going to tackle direction. There are 4 basic wind directions you need to know as a painter. There's head-on, side view, angled from the left, and angled from the right. Let me show you using the grids from the previous tutorial. You can download the 4 perspective grids I made up for you by visiting the link below. The first I've already shown you, which is head-on or front view. This is what you might see at the beach. I'm just drawing in little dots at the crossing of these perspective lines to give me the wave shapes. So here I put in 4 lines. I could do 1 more if I wanted to. I don't even have to circle the different points at this point. I can just eyeball it. Okay, so now we have side view. Now side view is something you don't see that much, but I'm going to lay it out for you here. So I basically have one crest line that runs straight down the center of the painting. Now, here's angled from left, so the wind is coming from back here to down here, lower right. So now we do our lines in this order. And if the wind were blowing, we would see the in between the waves looking like this. There's a very famous portrait and painting in the New York Yacht Club where the painter has done this with very little attempt to make it less obvious that he was tracing perspective lines. But it's a real thing. The next one is just the opposite of that, where the wind is coming from the right and going down to the left. So this would be a sea where the waves are coming like this. Now, of course, you can choose to have your wind coming from any direction, but these are just the basics. Now, let's look at some historical precedents that illustrate these different wind directions. For head-on, we have a Frederick Judd wall painting. I don't know the title of this work or where I got the image, but judging from the informality of it, it looks like a sketch. He was painting what he saw. Next, we have a Gustave Courbet painting, The Sea. He instantly fell in love with the sea when he encountered it in Trouville, and while this painting is, as they say, not for me, it does clearly illustrate a simple front view sea. For the next image, I took this at the Bibliothèque Municipale in Versailles, near the famous palace. In this one, the wind is coming from behind us, pushing the ships away. Sadly, I didn't get the printmaker's name. And here's a simple side-to-side view from a ship portrait in the Danish Maritime Museum in Helsingør, just an hour north of Copenhagen by train. I'm sorry, but my phone was dying, so I didn't get the artist's name or the name of the ship. In another side view, we have this painting from the Scheepvaartsmuseum in Amsterdam. This is a Jan van Goyen, and while it's not an obvious example, you can see from the direction of the flags that the wind is moving from left to right. He didn't want to paint his waves in straight lines, so he created short side view snippets. In another painting from the same museum, we can see another more fanciful side view, this by Hans Savery the Elder. The work, painted around 1600, is almost psychedelic. Much more common, we find the angled from left and angled from right views. I find that I paint much more angled from left views, possibly because I'm right-handed. First, we have Frederick Judd Waugh. The waves are being pushed from left to right. In Winslow Homer's fog warning, the waves are coming from the upper left.
In this painting at the Scheepvaartsmuseum by Louis Meyer, the waves are being pushed from left to right by the wind. In an Adam Silo painting from the same museum, again, the direction of the wind drives waves from left to right. From the other side, we have Frederick Jodoin again. This time his ocean rollers are coming from the right. Here, Martin Johnson Head's wind is pushing not only waves, but ominous storm clouds. Oscar Mendlich's seascape is clearly being driven from the right edge, and in C.W. Eckersberg's, again, the wind is blowing from the distant right to the left foreground.
So what is the basic shape of a wave? All waves, from the tiniest ripples on ponds to the largest ocean rollers, have the same basic features. They have crest lines, fronts, backs, and in between them, troughs. To illustrate this, I built a simplified 3D model of some waves. You can see here the four main features. Here are the crest lines, here are the fronts, here are the backs, and here are the troughs. Pretty basic, yeah? Waves are created when wind blowing across the water's surface transfers some of its energy to the water. Depending on how much wind and how long it blows, a lot or a little energy may be pushed into the water, creating swell. That's why on a calm day you might see smooth 10-foot high breakers landing on a beach. There was a storm or a high wind somewhere out there sometime before, but it's not windy now. It's also why when the wind is picking up, the surface of the water can be extremely choppy, but there might not be much swell. And I hate to throw more terms at you in this early stage, but this is important. Chop is the actual look of the surface of the water. This can be glass smooth or so rough it barely reflects anything. Swell is the wave, the rising and falling water created by energy being pushed along underneath the surface. The little waves, chop, are like a sheet that lies in one place on top of the big energy swell moving under it, created hours or days before by high wind. This is why you'll often see a piece of flotsam sitting in one place as the waves move under it, making it bob up and down. In this watercolor by Winslow Homer, you can see there is almost no wind, so the chop is minimal. But the swell is big, maybe 3 or 4 feet. This water is calm enough to allow the fisherman to stand up in his boat, but it would probably make me very seasick. Meanwhile, in breezing up, Homer is showing us a lot of chop. The surface of the water is really turbulent, but there is little swell, allowing the boys to perch safely with little fear of being bucked off. Now that we have words to describe the different elements, peak, crest, front, back, trough, chop, and swell, we need to talk about scale. Big waves are shaped exactly like little waves. Even ripples have the same basic shape as ocean rollers. That's why scale is so important. On our perspective graphs, we've been working on randomly sized waves, and they work because all waves basically have the same features. But once we put in a boat or a figure, we have chosen a scale. If we put a little boat on these waves, placing it correctly on our grid, we can see the waves are huge. But if we put a big boat on these waves, the waves barely register as chop. And now here's a little caveat about the perspective grids. The vanishing points on those grids are well above the horizon line. But wait, you say, they're perspective grids, how could they be wrong? They aren't wrong, but the Earth is not flat, it's a ball. So if you're standing on a beach, the water lapping at your toes, the farthest wave top you can see is 2.7 miles away. That's the end of the water, even if you're looking straight out and can see much farther. Beyond that, you're just looking at air. If you're 30 feet up, you can see just 7 miles. The reason they put lookouts at the tops of masts was that at 100 feet up, they could see the water for 12 miles, a whole lot farther than someone standing on the deck. And if a sailing ship were coming toward them and its masts were also 100 feet high, the lookout would spot the sails long before the ship became visible, at about 20 miles away. That's what lookouts meant when they said a ship was hull down, meaning the hull was already on the other side of the Earth's curvature from their vantage point. Okay, so we're going to end there for today. In the next tutorial, we begin painting, and I'll show you how to get realistic looking water every time. Thanks for being here, and have a great day.